Hi, I'm Allie Hamilton, and I'm so happy to welcome you to the Come As You Are podcast. Every week, we'll be talking about some aspect of healing, usually around childhood wounds and complicated familial relationships. The topics will always coincide with my personal essay of the week, and this will be a place where we can take a deep dive together. I'm so thrilled you've joined me and delighted for you to always come as you are. Hi there. Hi there. Welcome to our talk. The topic this week is the Big Bang. And I was writing about, the beginning of time. I really feel that where we are right now in the world, just not just in our country, but just everywhere, it's like the best view of things right now is from at least, 10,000 feet up, view from space, right? The pale blue dot, that idea. And so I was a little bit whimsical, lyrical essay about, 13.7 billion years ago, and just back when everything was condensed into this tiny, tiny dot, and just where things are right now. And part of where I am always coming from is empathy, right? Like, what is that? And empathy doesn't take sides, right? If you are feeling genuine, if there's something called mirror neurons that we all have, and we are literally wired for empathy. It is natural to us. It's a natural state. And it is the reason why if you are watching a film and you really connect with one of the characters who's going through something painful, you may find yourself crying. You may find yourself moved. It's natural to us to see ourselves in other people and to imagine how we would feel if we were them. And the more that we can come back to that natural state, the better things go. And at the moment, so much of what is happening and so much of what is causing incredible heartache, rage, frustration, and this is really all I've been able to write about and think about and talk about, because this is the water that we're swimming in all the time. It's this binary thinking, it's this, you're allowed to have empathy for these people but not these people, and that's not empathy. That's not how that works. So from the beginning of time, human beings, we've been violent. We've also been amazing. It's not all, you can't paint it with one brush here. If you look back from the beginning of like when human beings first arrived on this planet, and you go back from that beginning to where we are now, there have been amazing things. There are incredible qualities that human beings possess when they are operating from the best of themselves. Fear and hatred never open us. They never bring us to our most beautiful, loving, creative state. Whenever we are feeling fear, there is naturally an energy to that of tightening. We're feeling vulnerable, we're feeling unsafe, we're feeling misunderstood or judged or, othered, or it's that feeling, or we're afraid of what might happen. And so we are not acting, or we're second, third, fourth guessing our actions. And then we're, it's very hard to do anything at all. It's also exhausting. I was talking about this in the last episode. We're really not wired for prolonged, intense stress. That's not, it's not how we were made. We were really made to deal with short bursts of stress. And most people I know are they're burnt out, and it's been like this is not new. I think that the pandemic was the beginning of just like an incredible increase in people's constant low level anxiety and fear about whole new, we'd never been through that before. And what did it mean, and what was going to happen, and how long was it going to go on, and were we ever going to get back to being out in the world together again? And we're back out in the world together again now, and we're just enraged, or we're exhausted, or we're devastated. So what I am always trying to offer is like how can we work together here as one people on one planet? And part of what I was talking about in the essay this week is how many of the things that have really created so much heartbreak and violence and devastation are, man-made, woman-made, person-made. These are we came, and a lot of things happened along the way. We created tools, and some of those tools have been incredibly helpful, and some of those tools have been giant clubs that we used to bash people over the head if we didn't get what we wanted, or in order to take what we wanted. And so, but there's also this idea of the tribe, and watching the night sky to try to figure out if a storm is coming or which way is north, like, is there enough food for everyone? That collective well-being was also something that was natural to us. And if someone in the tribe was not okay, then no one was okay. Everybody was working together to try to make sure everybody had what they needed. So there's been this, this play, this mix of, I think, forever in human nature, the good in us and the stuff that is the flaws, right? Human beings are flawed. We're not all one way or all another way. And we are losing, I think, by the day, the ability to acknowledge these gray areas and to turn in and try to figure out, where am I at war within myself? Because everything we're seeing around us is a reflection of everything that's happening inside of us. That's you can really pretty easily see. And I was talking about how, we're made of star stuff. All of the elements in our bodies were growing inside, like the stars that we're seeing, and all of it's like we're made of those same elements. And I think if you can kind of wrap your head around that, then it makes sense that what is good for the universe, right, is good for each individual person. And what I mean by that is there are all kinds of theories. We don't even know for sure, right, like what is happening or how things are working. But certainly the Big Bang, like that suggestion is that there was an explosion finally of that tiny point, and that the universe is either going to like expand and expand and expand forever and ever and ever, which is, we can't even conceive of what that means, right? Or eventually it's going to expand so rapidly it cools off, slows down, and reverses course and collapses in on itself. Now, we don't have to spend a lot of time, digging into that, but if that is the energy, that expansion, right, then we could pretty much guess that the more we individually expand and open and stretch ourselves, like the better things are going to feel. And what I think is happening is there are a lot of people who are collapsing in on themselves now. And I think that a lot of the structures we have set up in this world are really not working well for us, on so many different levels. And we created we created borders, and we created countries, and we created governments, and we created this whole idea of sort of the planet being ours, that human beings were above all other creatures on planet Earth because we could reason. That's the going, that's how people can justify a lot of really predatory behavior, right, toward the planet and toward all other creatures on the planet who are not human beings, because we like to think there's a hierarchy and we're at the top, and so we can eat the animals because, and that is cultural. Like, not every culture believes that in the world. And part of what limits us is our lack of knowledge and our lack of learning, right? Like, how does it work in other cultures? Like, I mean, in India, the cows are revered. They're sacred creatures, and there's even in yoga, there's a pose called happy cow pose. And it's like, if yoga were created in the United States, which it wasn't, although we've certainly, turned it into something else, I doubt the pose would be called happy cow pose. It's like there's just a lot of, I think that our best hope right now is to try to, and it might sound naive at this point in time, but to really try to get back to this understanding that the planet is not ours. Like, people spend money and they say, like, this is my lawn, and hey, neighbor, your tree is encroaching on my property line that I paid for, and here is a piece of paper to show you where my property line ends and yours begins. And meanwhile, it's like, you're going to be on this planet, if you're very lucky and healthy and nothing happens to you, 100 years, maybe like 108 years, so we're here for a blink of time. This is not ours. We arrive here, and really no one has more right to any resources than anyone else. In all reality, it's like this whole idea of, does this group of people have a right to exist? That is a bizarre question to have to ask anyone about anyone. It's like, who's deciding who has a right to exist and whose right to existence is more valuable than anyone else's? Who's deciding that? Someone who's going to be here for 100 years? I mean, or several someones. I mean, that's part of what's going on. That's part of the problem. And the other part of the problem is greed and power, and this idea that we are entitled to take what we want, and sometimes, by force or any other way, to just take what we want. And I'm talking about history now. I'm not even talking about like the current environment. The current environment is like an outgrowth of how we've been doing things, So it doesn't exist in a vacuum. This is the way different societies, different civilizations, some of them failed, they rose and then they failed. But, it's a symptom of how things have been from the beginning of human beings, And so I think if we can get into that mindset a little bit more of, okay, first of all, something has gone really wrong at the foundation of just how we've set things up. And this idea that, the strongest are just going to take what they want, that would be useful, to bring into all of our awareness, is just like, in what ways, do I have any of that going on inside of me, where I feel entitled to things, or where I am making myself higher than someone else, or where I'm failing to see how things might be for another person, or where my privilege is blinding me, my ignorance about what that would feel like because I haven't lived it. Is that blinding me? Or is that, what are my own internal biases here? So that's stuff we can all work on, right? I can't fix what someone else is doing. I can really work on what I'm doing and how much attention I'm paying to what is happening in here. And, if everyone did that, then we would have a world full of introspective, you know, accountable people who were thinking about how their actions might impact the people around them and the planet and, the energy they're putting out all the time. We'd be in a different world. We'd be in a different state. Now, I know that is not likely to suddenly happen where everybody's going to say, okay, wait, let me just step back and see what is my part right now. But it's one of the things that I've been talking about lately because, activism, ideally, if you look around the world and there are things that are breaking your heart, and I have to assume that there are, the idea is, what can I do? How can I help? And adding to the rage in the environment does not help. It doesn't. Feeling outrage, yeah, absolutely. Like, I hope you're feeling something when you pay attention to what's happening right now. But, screaming into the abyss is not actually going to help anyone. So what is, right? Like, what can you do? And for me, I know, sometimes, I'll write to my representatives. I'll send emails, I'll make phone calls, and sometimes people say, well, does that really do anything? Do these people even care anymore? And even if it's just their own self-interest, even if it's nothing else but that, and we're all cynical at this point, and I think rightfully so. Certainly in our country, but I think it is a global situation now that the way things were supposed to work, these representatives that we send to, represent our feelings and our desires, and it's just gone. That is not occurring now because of greed and power corrupting, and people being so invested in their own self-interest, and that's coming out of the culture. We have a very me-centered culture, and everybody's got their own platform where they get to be the main character all the time. But even if that is the case, there is self-interest then. If nothing else, if you cannot appeal to somebody's ethics or their morals or their sense of decency or their compassion or their empathy, if you can't get them on that level, then you can get them on the level of self-interest. And if enough politicians are hearing from people, I'm not going to vote for you. If this is what you're going to do while you have, this position of power, I will not be voting for you. Believe me, these people, that is mostly what they're worried about at this point. The polls and everything else that they do, it's because they want to get a sense of am I safe? Is my cushy life protected? So if they start hearing from enough people, then they get a little nervous. And believe me, they're running these polls all the time, and they're kind of placing bets. Okay, I want to keep my job and I want to keep my my salary and my position. So what do people really care about? Let's take the temperature on the environment and see what my constituents are really concerned about, or even just the world at large here. And then that's what they're basing things on. So yeah, I think it matters. I think it's a lot more helpful than attacking people online. That for sure, I think. If you're going to do something online, send some emails, sign some petitions, make some donations if you can, volunteer. And I'm not telling you how to feel about whatever the issues. I'm saying whatever issues you see in this world, and this is where empathy comes in. If you are seeing something that insults your heart, then take action that is actually going to potentially help. And there are a lot of different things going wrong. I think we can all agree on that. We're not going to agree on everything for sure, but we can agree on that. And the binary thinking is really not, it is not it. This is not it. And, some of the people that listen to the podcast or read the essays, they're not yogis. That's completely fine. I'm not a zealot. I don't think there's only one way. I just think everybody has to try to find their own way toward some kind of peace inside themselves, whatever that's going to look like for you, And certainly for me, the yoga practice, meditation practice, breathing techniques, all these things help me, first of all, calm my nervous system, and also really try to recognize that I am not my thoughts. Like thoughts are like weather, they're going by, and it's almost like if you can imagine that you are like a tree, and the weather is going by. You don't have to give every thought that passes overhead your attention. You don't have to give it power. Sometimes the thoughts that are not even your own. Sometimes they're coming from the culture. They're coming from the air around you. And it's really good to have a little bit of space there and to realize, what is constant is whatever my particular spark is. It's like, if there are more than 7 billion people on the planet right now, but there's only one of you and one of me, then there is something particular, right? There's something that makes you you, that is essential to you, and there's something that makes me me. And some of it is like the collection of genes and atoms and all kinds of things that make me me, and some of it is all the stuff I've been through along the way, the different experiences I've had, and same for you. So some of it is nurture, some of it is nature, but we arrive at a certain place, and there is something essential about each one of us. And I genuinely believe that most human beings are kind and loving and curious. I do. I think at like their truest state, I think most human beings come into this world and they're like sponges, where we arrive here and we're just like, people call the first 3 months like that fourth trimester, because we're not like fully cooked. We certainly can't, if we were born in we wouldn't survive without nurturing and without someone there to hold us and feed us and keep us warm and change us and help us get to a place where we can speak and take action, and that takes time. Even little kids they're not safe. Even your 3-year-old, you're going to have to make sure they don't run into the street. It takes a significant amount of time for human beings to get to a place where they're awake and alert and able to recognize, real danger versus danger maybe they've been taught. And that was something I was writing about as well in the essay, is that, sometimes you are growing up in a family of origin that is teaching you that, some people are better than others, that certain ways of life are, sinful, or there's a lot of stuff in any given family of origin that I hope at some point, right, you grow up and you step out of that and you question. That's generally what happens in the teenage years. That autonomy really kicks in and people rebel. And that's a good thing, because it is a sign that this person is entering, personhood and trying to figure out, who am I on my own 2 feet? What do I think? Separate from what I've been taught to think. What do I actually believe? And how do I feel? And one of the most painful things that can happen is when someone is growing up and their family of origin has certain beliefs and feelings, and they are having their own natural inclination towards some of the things they're being taught are not okay. Incredibly painful. I know so many people that have gone through that to some degree or another, sometimes to really incredible degree, painful degree. So that's part of the process of figuring yourself out. And the more you can try to open your mind, this is what I mean by like, are you at war within yourself anywhere? Are you being violent with yourself? Because start there. I mean, that's the obvious place to start. If you are, if the quality of your internal dialogue is harsh and unforgiving and unrelenting and shaming, I mean, you're going to turn that energy out. That's what we do. Whatever we're filled with is what we're going to turn out. And there are a lot of people, the energy that they are turning out is, there's a lot of violence and rage, and that's really worth looking at. And that's what I've been trying to emphasize, because that's something that you yourself can affect change there really soon. Like that's something you can do, and you can really start to work on and think about, where am I intolerant? Are there places even inside my own self that I reject? Because if I examine them, like things are going to have to change. That's scary. People don't like change, so they cling and they kind of like reject feelings that threaten the status quo. They like numb out or push down, repress, whatever it is, feelings that are going to, if acknowledged, force change. And that can look like all kinds of things. It might mean a disruption to somebody's feeling of being safe. I can't mess with the status quo, because how am I going to be okay? And then if you have other people like on the boat with you, your family, whatever, children, are they going to be okay? Like, I can't even really entertain this thought or this feeling, because that would just explode my life, and I can't do that. And so people are kind of like pushing things down. That's an example of being at war within yourself. You're having a feeling and you're not allowing yourself to examine it even. Maybe it is going to be a thing you examine and you say, yeah, that's not something that I want to pursue or take action upon, and maybe it is, and things need to change. It's like, but trying to dig your heels in and say, like, that's not an exploration I'm willing to make, that's where you start to suffer inside, internally. That's where things start to not feel good, not be flowing. And I think a lot of people do that. There's a lot of kind of self-editing that goes on all the time. People are second-guessing themselves and pushing feelings away and not allowing themselves to even just feel the feeling. It's like, you don't have to take action on every feeling that you have, and I hope you don't. But to not even let yourself think about these things or feel them, to think about the way that you are speaking to yourself throughout the day. If you are highly critical, if your internal dialogue, like if that were playing out loud, like a whatever, like let's Alexa or whatever, like if you could actually hear your internal dialogue out loud, and I mean, let's all be grateful that that's not the case, but like would other people around you be horrified? Like, are you speaking to yourself in such a harsh and unforgiving way that if someone who loved you heard, they would just be, shocked on your behalf and appalled? Like, that's something to really look at. And in yoga, we have, just like in every, really any and every spiritual practice is going to have some kind of like, precepts at the foundation, and they're generally speaking the same. It's like non-harming in yoga. Ahimsa is what, non-harming is like, that's just most and when I say spiritual, I don't mean religious. And you may be a religious person, and I have all the respect in the world for you as long as your religion isn't causing harm to you or anyone else. It's few and far between that we can find religions like that. But, as long as it is making you a more loving person, more tolerant, more inclined to pitch in and help someone in need, then I think it's beautiful. And I was saying that a few weeks ago. It's like we all have to kind of figure out for ourselves what makes sense to us. We don't have to agree on it. But, I do think that is also an exploration at a certain point that is necessary, because we all know that our time is limited. Whether we like to think about it or not is another story, but we all know we're not here forever and ever. We're here for such a blink of time that I do think if spending some time trying to figure out, well, what do I think this is all about? What do I think life is all about here? Let me really think about like my beliefs, my core beliefs of like, what is this about, so that I'm spending the short amount of time, relatively speaking, in a good way, in a way that makes sense to me. And in our culture, certainly in the United States, right, what we're taught is like, if you want to be happy, then it's all external stuff. You've got to have a lot of money and a big house and a fast car, and you've got to look right, and you've got to, grab all these brass rings, and none of that works as far as like genuine ease, peace. And to me, that's like when I'm thinking about what does it mean to be happy in this world. To me, it's not realistic to think you're going to wake up every day and just be like, oh, yes, yay, another day, and I'm just going to be happy all day. And it's like, that's not it. It's just like you want to be at ease in your own skin, and you want to know what you believe, because that is what creates ease, is knowing yourself. And then, by my own personal experiences, the more time that I spend trying to help other people in whatever ways I can, connect with other people, the more fulfilled I feel. And that feeling of being fulfilled to me is a definition of happiness. Is like, am I spending my time in a way that feels meaningful to me? And am I using my energy to hopefully create more love and more peace and more empathy? Like, am I doing that? And you're not going to get it right all the time, but at least am I showing up and doing the very best that I can, right? Am I trying? That to me is like, that is success. If anyone is spending their time, first of all, thinking about like, what am I doing here? And what are my gifts? Like, what can I offer that might possibly be helpful to someone else? And let me go about the business of trying to offer it. Even if we're talking about like within your family, or holding a door open for a stranger, or letting people merge. I'm not talking about like saving the world. It would be great if we could all save the world today. Like, let's do it. But, you might think those are like really small things, but I'd like you to think about the last time somebody held a door open for you, stranger, or some stranger let you merge, or did any small, nice thing, online or otherwise. I'm so sorry you're going through that, or like, just that it, for me, I know it restores my faith in humanity. It truly does. A small, tiny thing like that, because those little things add up, and they make you have faith in other human beings, in the human race, And when we start to lose that faith, that is when things get really dark for people. When we start to feel like, wow, the world is on fire, these horrible things are happening, it's, no one is like, I'm saying this, I want this to change now, I feel powerless. And then there's like, half the people are screaming at me like in a completely different way, coming from a completely different viewpoint. That is when people start to feel really scared and hopeless. And believe me, I have my days where I am like struggling to stay hopeful, struggling to continue to like have some faith that we're not going to, destroy ourselves. We're not going to insist upon this binary way of thinking and other people and do things that are just, as I was talking about that last week, like the minute you other someone, the minute you dehumanize them, then they're outside your circle of compassion and you can do whatever you want. And we have too much of that energy going on right now. And it's really hard because there are things that people are doing and believing, and like I see things and I just think that is not okay. This person has, like, for me, where the line is if you are trying to impose your beliefs on someone else. And, it's like we all have enough to manage paying attention to our own sides of the street. I literally do not know a single person who is so evolved and enlightened that they can start telling other people how to live their lives. I don't know one. And I know a lot of teachers and writers, and I literally don't know a single person who is so loving and kind and full of empathy and really getting it right all the time that they can then start telling other people how to live. And I'm going to also say that the people who have the most empathy and are the most enlightened would never do that anyway. Full stop. The only time I feel like, okay, I have to take action on that is when I see someone's rights being violated. And I don't just mean constitutional rights, legal rights. I mean just their right to exist and, live and eat and, love their families. Like when I see that, wherever I see it, then I want to take action. When I see suffering, it doesn't matter like where the suffering is happening or what the person looks like or who they pray to. Like that isn't it. It's a human being suffering. So wherever that is occurring, if I see it, I want to take action. It upsets me, and forcing people to say, well, who do you, like, which people are you upset? Like, if this person is suffering, like, it's okay for you to care about that, but not that person because they brought it on themselves. That's not it. That's not empathy in its purest. It's not empathy, period. Not even in its purest form. Empathy isn't looking at any of that stuff. Empathy is just, I am a human being and I can imagine how I would feel if these things had happened, were happening to me or someone I loved. And so I'm going to take some kind of meaningful action to try to do whatever I can, to like help in some way. But we've gotten to a place where, at least online, the environment is just like, I was saying, it's like a living, breathing nervous system in a constant state of fight or flight. And, that is so disheartening. Like when you just see people, someone expresses like heartbreak about something and then somebody else attacks them. Well, what about this? And it's like, it's not a contest. And you may have friends, again, I'm going to bring it back to like, there's the microcosm and the macrocosm, right? You may have people in your life and you say like, oh, I'm going through this. It's really, I don't know, I'm really struggling. This is really hard. And they say, oh, well, I had that and I had it worse. Like, here's what it's such a like, oh, okay, thanks. Like, you don't feel any sense of connection anymore because it's turned into, like who wins the having suffered the most award. Nobody wants to win that contest. That's not it. It is not a competition of like who's suffering them. It's just human beings are suffering. What can I do? If I see something that's happening anywhere, what can I do? And unfortunately, there are so many places in the world right now, so many where people are suffering. And it can be overwhelming, it can be overwhelming and incredibly, it can just really make you feel so small and powerless to help in any way. And that's the danger, to really try not to let yourself get to that place. Whatever that means, if that means that you need to step away from the fray for a little while and just take whatever meaningful action you can on your own time and in your own way, that's beautiful. Try not to let people, there's a lot of that going on too, is like this being attacked for the way you're doing your activism. I mean, please, let's just not do that, okay? Like, we just need people to take action. Let's not do that. Shaming people for not taking action in the way that you want them to is the last thing we need. As long as people are doing something, they're trying in their own ways, whatever ways those are, to me, that's it, So again, that idea of what are we doing here? What are we doing? Because we may not be able to agree on most things. We may not be able to, but I think we can agree on some things. And certainly what we're doing right now, I think we can agree this is not it. This is not sustainable, to wake up every day and be traumatized by all the different things that are happening in the world. Like, if that's the case, clearly we're not doing it right. If world news is traumatizing wherever in the world it is, that's not it. And this isn't new. Again, human beings, like, it's like there's a whole mix of things here. Most people, you cannot paint with one brush or another. But I do think there are so many genuinely good, loving, caring people who want a peaceful world for everyone. And, you don't want to lose faith in that and just give up and not do anything because the world is on fire and like, let's just burn the thing down. That's not it. That's not the energy that we need. I think some calming energy would be good, and some sense of what's happening inside me and recognizing that is what you're going to, that's what you're going to be sharing when you go out into the world, whether you're going out into the online world or the world itself. Whatever is happening inside you is that you're going to spread it, whether you mean to or you want to or not. And it doesn't mean you can't have a rough day. If you are struggling, if you are exhausted, like, we're all going to have those days and those times that we're just like hard to do anything, and that's okay. You don't have to feel like, if I'm going out into the world, like, I don't want to spread my heartache and devastation. I mean, you don't have to, it's not that. It's just that, like, to be aware that how things are inside of us definitely going to affect how things are around us and how people feel, in our presence, and to try at least to be a source of comfort and peace and calm and the ability to listen and to tolerate discomfort. I think that's part of what's gone wrong too, is that it's such a fast, everything is like, we want instant gratification, we want the dopamine hit. It's really hard to tolerate discomfort, and that is one of the reasons that I love the yoga practice and the meditation practice so much, is that, if you develop a meditation practice, it's not comfortable. Like, depending on how you do things, if you sit upright for any extended period of time, you're going to reach a point where it's not comfortable anymore, especially if you decide not to move. And I practice Vipassana meditation, which means insight meditation. You're using the sensations that are happening in your own body to stay present, to stay curious, to stay engaged with things that are happening right here, right now. And that, if you can do it, if you can get your mind to focus on sensation, you are, drawing it away from all of that thought, that racket that can be happening in the mind. And usually what's happening in the mind is we're like racing into the past, very often with regret or longing or a desire to like go back and redo things, make different choices, say different things, show up in a different way. Or we're racing into the future and we're doing that with a lot of fear, like what might happen, or rehearsing for disaster. If you've ever spent time like being worried about a conversation and you're playing it in your head and playing it in your head for days, and then you get there and it just goes a completely different way than you thought, you can't get that time back that you spent worrying and dwelling and, well, if they say this, I'm going to say that, or like, if I say this, or is it going to like ruin everything? All these things that we can do and really get stuck in our own heads, that's a lot of energy and turmoil happening inside. And so meditation is a beautiful tool for just quieting the mind and giving it something to focus on that's happening right here, right now. And in the form of meditation that I do, there's a roadmap, because you don't even want to, if you were to sit and not move for like more than 10 minutes, sit up, right? You make a long spine and you just sit and you say to yourself, I'm not going to move. I'm going to just stay here. After 10 minutes, there's going to be something happening in your body somewhere that's like, oof. It might be like a shooting pain underneath your shoulder blade, or it might be a real desire to twist or stretch. And you can, okay? If you start meditating for a long time and you really develop a practice, eventually you're going to want to get to a place where you don't move, where you just sit with that discomfort and you stay with the roadmap. So instead of letting your mind dwell on this really intense pain underneath your shoulder blade, you're following a map. You're like, no, right now I feel that, I'm aware of that, but right now I'm going to pay more attention to like my right big toe, because that's where I am in the map, And so you are training your mind not to give its attention and its power to the massive sensation that you're feeling. You're training it to be able to feel that, know that that is there, but focus on, something else. And I'm not talking about overriding or spiritual bypassing or anything like that. It's just you become then the master of your own mind, instead of letting your mind just jump all over the place from, one person screaming this and another person screaming that, and, whatever, you're scrolling and there's just one horrifying, way of thinking after another until you can't like function anymore. You're able to say to your mind, you know what? I don't actually think this scrolling is really a productive use of time right now. Let's go write an email. And you can go and do that. That is what it looks like to have some mastery over your mind. And that's one of the most brilliant things in like a long-term meditation practice. And it's one of the reasons that I that is my go-to, because it gives you those tools to not let yourself get so immersed in despair that you can't help yourself or anyone else. Like that's not gonna help us. And also to be able to have, it's called developing a witness, and it's that idea of like, I'm not my thoughts, so I'm having this thought arise, and let me just like pay attention for a second. Like, is this something that I want to give power to and energy to, or is this some random thing that came flying through, because of an external message, or or something someone else is telling me I should think, or like what is that thought that I'm having about, and does it deserve my time and energy? I think anything that is intrinsic to you, that is like a feeling that is arising in you that like something is not okay, something just doesn't feel right. Um, those are worth examining, and even if it feels scary, because if you were to really allow yourself to feel these feelings, there's a possibility that you might suddenly need to like walk down, take a fork in the road that you weren't expecting. It's still good to like be able to invite that feeling in for tea, you know? That's a concept in the meditation practice. Is like invite our feelings in and see what's happening. Let the feeling be a visitor for a little while so you can understand yourself. That is how we become accountable people, and that's um, I think that is really, there's a dearth of that right now. There's just a lot of activated people in a heightened state of emotion, which is understandable, but it's not helping. And I think if you find yourself out in the world and someone says, my heart is breaking over X, and your instant response is, what about Y? That's something to look at. In any scenario, I'm not talking about one thing right now. In any scenario, if someone that you care about or someone you meet along the way expresses sadness or grief or confusion or fear or concern about something, to really be able to just listen and open. And I mean, maybe you'll walk away and not feel any differently than you did. Or maybe something in that space that you have been able to create and your ability to tolerate discomfort for a moment is exactly the environment where there can be some kind of bridge built there, some kind of understanding. And one of the tools that I think is really interesting and powerful and useful is imago therapy, which is this idea that relationships are not happening. If I'm in a relationship with you, that relationship that we have, it doesn't exist inside of me, and it doesn't exist inside of you. It's existing in the space between us. And each one of us is responsible for what we're contributing to that space. I can't control what you decide to put into that space. We are creating this third thing that we call our relationship. And it's a co-creation. It's a living, breathing thing that's going to have qualities and its own language and, eventually memories. And so I can only be responsible for doing the work to try to put my compassion into the space between us, my ability to listen even if I feel uncomfortable with what you're saying, my desire to really understand you, my, hopefully compassionate, honest speech if we're having a real core disagreement about something, to be able to express myself in a loving way. All of that energy, that's like that non-harming, that I was talking about. It's like, can I express what I think and how I feel in a way that is kind, and can you receive it in a way that is kind? And neither one of us, that doesn't mean we have to agree. It just gives us some kind of environment where we can talk and communicate and exchange ideas. And that is what is getting lost right now. And that's the part for me that's really scary and concerning, is that we're not, talking to one another. Now, again, if someone is saying things that are like absolutely coming from a place of ignorance, let's just say, if someone they were taught like certain things that do insult you, like insult your heart, insult your soul, like who someone should love. Let's just use that. Yeah, that is it's really hard, because then you're talking about a marginalized group of people, and they need voices. They need people to say, that's not it. People can love anyone they want to love. It has no impact on you and your life and your ability to love who you want to love. And those are conversations that we need to have. If we have people in our lives who have been taught things that are harmful to other people, you don't want to give up and say, oh, and I know we all have, I mean, I don't know if we all have, but I know there's this certain percentage of us who have, for example, aging parents who may have like wildly different ideas about the world and like how things should be, and that can be so triggering because it's your family and they set up the motherboard, so they can like push the buttons. It's really hard to stay calm and to say, I really see things very differently. And, this thing that you're saying is really hurtful and harmful. And I know you, and I know that that's not it's not your heart. You're not like a hurtful person, but like, I really want to try to talk to you about this because that is painful for me to hear you saying. It's deeply disturbing to me that you are feeling that way when it has zero impact on your life. And that's fear. That's what I'm talking about. All it is when people are trying to control what other people are doing with their lives that has no impact on them, that is fear. It's some feeling of like your choices threaten me. And usually what it is, really, when you dig and dig and dig, is that it's this idea that if you're making a different choice than I am, you're judging my choice. You are saying that my choice isn't good. And that is why people that get into that headspace feel attacked. It's like, it's not real. It's a feeling. It's a feeling that's real in them, but it's not actually what is happening. If your neighbors are flying their pride flag and you are heterosexual, like, that's not them saying your choice is wrong or bad. And there's no threat. It's just they are making a different choice that is good for them. And it has nothing, you have nothing, you have nothing, to be concerned about as far, there's no threat to you. But a lot of the time people are, it's knee-jerk, it's reactive, it's old, things they were taught. And yeah, the more you can kind of hold a mirror up and say, listen, that's not real, like that has nothing to, there's no impact on you there. There's nothing that you need to get involved. Like, you don't have to, just, what is it that's bothering you? Like, let's have that conversation. What is it about that that's so, why is that upsetting? Why does that bother you? If someone loves someone, like, what does that have to do with you? But you can't have that sort of, and believe me, I know it's like exhausting, but you can't have that kind of conversation if you're triggered. And, if you start screaming at someone, it's like, you're not gonna create that space to have meaningful conversation and maybe possibly open someone's mind a tiny little bit, and even that, like, I'm not even saying if you're able to do this that it's gonna work, but at least there's some hope. That certainly has more hope of working than calling someone names and telling them to, F off, right? Like, that's what I'm talking about. And the world has become a lot of that. It's just like, okay, give up, we're done. And unfortunately, we can't be done because we're all on this planet together. And that is what I was really trying to write about this week and talk about is, like it or not, we're on this planet together, and we've got to figure out how to do better than we're doing. Because at the moment, there's so much outward violence, and outward bigotry and intolerance and rage and a misuse of power in so many ways. Like if if you're bigger and stronger and you have a bigger club, you don't want to be that person who's like, I'm going to get what I want by any means necessary, and I don't care who I hurt in the process. You got 100 years if you're lucky, that's who you want to be? I really don't think so. I mean, I don't think you're going to have a life that feels good if you spend it trying to hurt other people. I don't think that's going to go well. I don't think you're going to get to the end of your life and say, yeah, that was a good use of my time. I was here on planet Earth, and with my blink of time, I tried to tell other people how to live. And when they didn't do what I wanted, I used the power that I had to make them or block them or do whatever I could to make their lives painful. That's not, that's not it. Those are not the ingredients to a beautiful life. And you never know how much time you have here. So to me, at least in my lifetime, it has never been more urgent to really do that work, that internal work of trying to figure out where you are possibly splitting yourself off from your own feelings, where you're possibly at war inside of yourself, where you are being violent toward yourself, maybe in the way that you're talking to yourself, or in your lack of compassion, your lack of patience for your own process, your unwillingness even to allow yourself to explore a thought or a feeling that maybe really is trying to get your attention, that maybe is really essential for a big shift in your life that would change everything for the better. Like, that is a good thing to try to figure out. Anywhere you are feeling you may have othered a segment of the population, to really consider, can I, as hard as it may be, can I try to recognize that if I had been born into that person's family, in that part of the world, and if I had been taught those things when I was a spongy baby child growing up in that environment, that would be me. I would be that person that I'm othering right now, and let me try to at least rehumanize them in my mind and see if they're as repugnant as their beliefs might be to me. Can I try to still somehow recognize their humanity and their fear and their pain that is creating this painful, hateful language? That vitriol that is coming out is an expression of a deep pain that is happening inside that person, a deep unrest. Can I recognize that, as hard as it is? And can I then try to, if it seems possible, have a conversation? I do think that our actions matter, and I think that we need to get back to a place of compassion without borders, empathy without borders. As hard as it is, a hard practice. It's an advanced practice. It's not, it's not for the faint of heart. But I think we're at a crossroads now where that is the medicine that is needed to start to heal what is so deeply broken in this world. We've just lost the thread. We've lost the thread completely. We're on a planet that certainly at one time provided everything we all needed to survive, all the resources we could possibly have needed. And we started to divvy them up and have people, take ownership over things and deny access to people who couldn't pay, we're like claiming things and sticking our flags in all these, this is mine, that is not the right energy, folks. That is not it, and it's not yours. It's yours, if you want to think of it that way, you can, but you're going and the planet is staying. You're not taking your little piece of land with you. You're not taking anything with you. What you're leaving behind is the impact you had on the people around you and the memories they carry, and maybe the energy that you have extended in their direction. Maybe that stays with them. I certainly hope so. But you're not taking your plot of land with you. You're not taking the tree on your property with you because it's not yours. It's staying. So if you can get into that headspace and just ask yourself, do I have whatever society I'm part of, do I have power? Do I have privilege? Are things easier for me because of where I was born, and the advantages that I had, and the way our twisted culture values a certain segment of people over another segment of people? And if so, can I really look at that, and not make myself recognize I'm not higher than anyone, if there's someone unhoused on the street, I am not higher than that person. Something happened there in their life. Something happened. They have a story, and it's probably, if you took the time to talk to them, you'd have a whole new understanding. And where else am I doing that? Where else am I just deciding someone's story doesn't matter? My story, I'm entitled, or I'm more entitled to the advantages this world has to offer than someone else. And try to really work on that, and and shift that thinking, shift it, really recognize that is not real or true. And also, if you are another one of there's ahimsa, non-harming, and there's non-hoarding, aparigraha has this idea of don't be taking more than you need. And are there any places where maybe you could take a little less? Are there any places where you could take a little less and give a little more? And I'm not, look, small steps, whatever. That's shifts are made through mindful, small steps. But to really be thinking about, even if it's one person, can I stop and talk to this person? Can I buy them a sandwich? Can I don't know, is there anything I can do as I'm going through this day today that would make the world a slightly better place, that might give somebody just that extra reason to hang on another day? Be that person, and you get to the end of your life and you're like, okay, I tried. Maybe it didn't all go the way I wanted it to, but I know while I was here, I tried really hard to be a source of love and kindness and empathy and compassion. I tried. And I tried every day. That I think you could then get to the end of your life and feel like, okay, that was good. I did the best any of us can do with the time that we have. So yeah, I hope it's a meaningful conversation and a continuation of the conversation that we've been having. I know that it's just really, it's hard right now, for those of us who feel just intense grief over what feels like a very broken world right now. And again, this is not a one issue thing that I'm talking about. There are children suffering and dying all over the world. It's not just in one place. And it's tough to face that reality every day and feel like, how can I make it stop today? You can't. You're not going to make it stop today, but you can do something to make your voice heard and to try to create more peace and love inside yourself and more peace and love around, in the world around you. You can take action that is meaningful and makes sense to you. And if everybody started doing that, like now, it would help. There's a lot of us. So I'll leave you with that. And, I'm easy to find if you're struggling. And I am so grateful to be in conversation with you and about things that, I think many of us are feeling. And I'll see you very soon. You know where to find me.